Well, hello everyone. Welcome to week 6. And I hope you all have looked at the new Zoom link because we are in the post-daylight saving mode. So today we are planning to discuss about liver detoxification pathways. Again, there are a few things in this session which I will keep highlighting for your exams, but also from the clinic perspective as well. It's an interesting one. I have always noticed students appreciate the new facts that they learn in this session. And again, few of these diagrams, save it and take it to your clinic in future because it will be really handy. Okay, so I hope you would have revised the structure and functions of liver from your bioscience subjects. As usual, I'll rely on your previous knowledge and wisdom before progressing on this session, where we are going to touch a little about what are the components of liver or liver structure that are involved in the filtering process. Then we will go through in detail about what happens in the phase 1 detox pathway. Then what happens in phase 2. Now phase 2 actually has got 6 deconjugation pathways. My aim would be that you do not get overwhelmed, but take the main crux of that pathway. Then we'll touch upon alcohol detoxification as well. It is a long pathway, but we will try to understand which enzymes, which nutrients have to be diverted from the normal functioning of the liver in order to take care of alcohol that is bombarding the liver for metabolization, excretion as well. So that will be my main emphasis. Then we will also discuss, there is a bright side that little bit of alcohol is good, and there are some social implications that we will face when we look at different clients. So I plan that we complete the session slides in about 1.5 hours, and then we all can divide into some groups and have our own discussion. Okay. So now we know that liver is an amazing factory in a human body. It's not a mini factory. Actually, it's a major factory, though it weighs only 1.5 kilos. So can anybody recall some of the functions of liver? I know one is written right here, but there are many which are not written in the slides.
Nancy, I know one is the breakdown of the heme from the red blood cells, isn't it? The bilirubin.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Nancy. Thank you.
Morning and afternoon. Yes, you're right. So all the RBCs, what is the lifespan of RBCs, guys?
120 days, Nancy.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. So after 120 days, what happens? All those cells, they are degenerated, they are die, and they all go to liver for processing. And our liver knows the importance of sustainability. So we make bilirubin from that so that we can utilize it to excrete the toxins that are also coming towards liver. So that was one aspect. What more? What are the other important functions of liver?
Well, Nancy, it makes bile as well, doesn't it? Makes Oh, emulsification of the fats.
Yes, that's correct too. Thank you. Then does it store anything?
Vitamin A, Nancy.
Yes, wonderful. It stores vitamin A, it stores ferritin. It makes all the transporter proteins, isn't it? It's at the heart of everything. Then what about all the drugs that we take? Blood pressure medication, cancer medication, where do they go for metabolization? To the liver. So I know you all have studied about the structure of liver. So just an overview that it is actually made up of many, many lobules, you know, and it is made up of epithelial cells, and those are the cells that get inflamed when something is going wrong somewhere, which we will learn in a while. Then remember that there is a connection. There is a fresh blood, oxygenated blood coming via portal artery. And also there is a portal vein, which is connected via the gut, about which we studied last week, that all the nutrients and microbial products, they also can reach the liver. So its main, and one of the main function is that it is taking care of filtering the blood. It's tackling about 2 liters of blood, and it is filtering all the bacteria, endotoxin, and other stuff that is reaching. Okay. I'm just going through my notes so that I don't miss anything. Right. Now, because liver is a major factory, all the important functions of body are taking place there. Therefore, it has its own fighters, its own immune cells, and they are called as Kupffer cells, or they can be pronounced as Kupffer cells. They are the largest population of phagocytes, and they are located in the liver. They are acting as the first line of defense in the liver, because liver is always under attack. If we have any bacterial infection, if we had any injury also, maybe some of the cellular tissues need to be taken care of, they all reach liver. So it has to be protected. And that happens via Kupffer cells. So remember this one, their name, and that they are the largest macrophages in our body. What are macrophages? What do they do? Would anybody like to comment?
Nancy, do they phagocytose? Are they phagocytose?
Yes, correct, Kathleen. And you know how I remember? I don't know why. I remember at this time amoeba. And you know, the way amoeba engulfs everything and dissolves it. In a way, macrophages are that powerful. So they have that phagocytic capabilities, and then they release all kinds of cytokines, chemokines, and soluble biological mediators. What do I mean by that? So they have a mechanism to fight the infection, and that mechanism is some soluble particles or some immune cells that are inflammatory in their action. So that's how body acts. And one of them is eicosanoids that we make from the fats. Every cell membrane has a fatty layer. So we make eicosanoids from that fat. And we will learn more about that in session 10 on inflammation. So these macrophages have the capability to kill all those microbes or any other toxin that enters the liver. Now, what happens? Just imagine if there is a person who is suffering from metabolic syndrome, and I'm discussing it because it is relevant to your second assessment. So, people who have insulin resistance, who have, NAFLD or maybe alcohol dependence, that means their liver has to do its normal function, plus it also has to take care of all these metabolites. A lot of fat coming, trans fats coming, and they have to metabolize because they are not conducive for the health of every cell. In that case, these Kupffer cells, they get into this inflammatory mode, and in doing so, they even harm the normal cell. That's why people who have NAFLD, insulin resistance, who are obese, or they have any viral infection, they would have cell degeneration in the liver. Does that make sense? So a time comes, Kupffer cells, they start damaging the cells. It's unintentional. They are trying to protect liver, but in doing so, they start harming the liver cells also. There may be fibrogenesis, there may be clotting, and if a person continues with their dietary and lifestyle habit, that may also translate into cirrhosis.
Nancy, so this is the hepatocytes that they're harming, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But remember, last week session, there is a connection with the intestine.
Yes.
So then that end product or these inflammatory molecules can travel to the gut also. And they do the same harm even there.
Is this like an autoimmune reaction then, an autoimmune?
No, not in the real sense.
No.
Okay, if they are able to keep the infection low, then they subside. Then in the ideal world, they should not harm the cell. But what I mentioned was if a person continues to take alcohol, if they are living in an environment where there is exposure to heavy metals, and then they are constantly in the fight mode and unintentionally they may harm the other cells. Is that okay now?
Yes,
So
thanks, Nancy.
normally it should not be autoimmune, okay? Right. Okay. So as Kathleen mentioned in the beginning, that liver synthesizes and secretes bile, which is not only a carrier of toxic substances, but we have learned in session 1 and 3, that how important they are to absorb fat. Okay, let's start with the liver detoxification process. So this is a 2-step process. What our body is trying to do is, see, some of these steroids that we take in the drug form, or some of these we are making in our body, cortisol, estrogen, sometimes we are making in large amounts. Many of the drugs that we are taking, medicines, they are all fat soluble. Okay. So now liver has a 2-step process. In the first step, it tries to metabolize all these toxins or even body's normal end products into something that is water soluble so that body can excrete it via urine. Then sometimes these products, they are very complex. So the first step is not able to take care of it. However, it ensures that it does something to those toxins that phase 2 can then act upon them. Okay, so this is the protective ability of the liver, and it has some xenobiotic biotransforming enzyme. What are xenobiotics? If I may ask?
Nancy, is it I know there's is it something to do with like chemical or the foreign?
Yeah, foreign antigen, foreign product that can harm the DNA. That's kind of its connotations. So yes, so what liver has to do it? It has to sense it, and then it has to metabolize it to make it water soluble. And if that doesn't happen in the first one, it does something to that product so that phase 2 can take care of it. So what happens in the phase 1 is that either hydroxylation happens. What is hydroxylation? Sorry, I'm asking so many questions today. What is hydrolysis?
It's adding water, is it, Nancy? Is that what it's water? Yeah.
Yeah. And what is oxidation?
Removing hydrogen.
Yes, thank you. We are moving hydrogen, or we are taking care of the electrons. So the aim is that the compound becomes water soluble. And how do we do it? Now, please remember that there are about, 50 to 100 enzymes, but they are given one name, cytochromes. Okay. And as the word has in its name chrome, that it is heme dependent. And they are present in many places in our body. And as you would recall, it is the same family that works in the electron transport chain. Okay. But here in the liver, we call them cytochrome P450. Now, why do we call them P450 is, when scientists were trying to identify it under spectrophotometer. So cytochromes demonstrated a peak. They demonstrated a peak color at 450 wavelength. You don't have to remember that. So I was just reading it, why it is called P450. So that's the reason. So what you need to remember is that it is a ion dependent enzymes, and there are various forms of it. And okay, I'll come to that in the next slide. So what's happening is that with the help of these ion-dependent cytochrome enzymes, phase 1 involves hydrolyzing the toxins, making them hydrophilic, so that they are easily excreted via kidney, or they are then taken up by phase 2 to be further converted into an excretable form. Okay. So these cytochromes, they will act on fatty acids, steroids, xenobiotics, heavy metals, pollutants, hydrocarbons, medications, etc., etc. Now, I mentioned in the last slide that there are about hundreds of them. You don't have to remember that, but there are some of the examples given in this slide. Okay. And you would notice most of the literature around liver detox, you don't find easily in any textbook. And whenever we are preparing for assessment 2, students often come to me that they don't find enough articles. So I will share a few. But what I have noticed is that most of this information is coming up from the research in drug metabolism. So when any drug is being made, they think in mind which cytochrome would be able to metabolize it. Okay, because that drugs has to be acted upon by the liver, then it has to reach the liver and do its function. And that's where some of our herbal and nutritional intervention can contradict with that mechanism. So we don't have to remember all these cytochromes, but we need to be mindful that there can be some interactions going on here. So that's why the activity of cytochromes is dependent on genetics, because everybody is different. Some people, though it has not been identified so far, but some people may have some single nucleotide polymorphism in any of these cytochromes. So they may not be able to metabolize few drugs or few components. Has anybody heard about people who cannot metabolize alcohol?
Yes, Nancy. Yes.
Yeah, so when I was studying, I had a colleague who was also doing PhD, and she was from Chinese origin. So she never had alcohol, but once when we were celebrating something or we were just trying to, I should not be saying that, de-stressing with our PhD work, when we tried to have it, she could not take even one serving. She would turn all red. So one of the reasons for that is that they don't have one particular enzyme, alcohol dehydrogenase. But I am giving the example here because they might have a genetic issues or SNP in these particular enzymes so that they cannot oxidize alcohol. Yes, that's the right word, Ali, Asian flush. So what Ali is saying in the chat boxes that one of her friends had reported of Asian flush. Okay. Would anybody like to comment how nutritional status can impact on functioning of cytochromes?
I remember
No, you
I was just going to say, I remember about the eating grapefruit. That isn't that it blocks like 50% of a lot of metabolism. Something?
Correct. Thank you. Yes, that's correct. And Isabel is saying in the chat box that enough iron intake. Wonderful. Very good point. Yes, because these enzymes are dependent on iron. Anybody else? I know somebody else was saying something. Okay. We will know about it more. For example, here. So now when cytochromes are carrying out that hydroxylation reaction, they are using the active form of niacin. So that becomes another important nutrient for optimum liver detoxification. Now, see, whenever I am, let's say, again, I'm giving a very, I sometimes feel I give very stupid examples, but that's what coming into my mind. If we are doing barbecue, okay, and if we are using coal, what is the end product? So we are generating something not so good, isn't it? Hydrocarbons. There is blackness also, and all that. So the point I'm taking is that when liver has to take care of all that toxins, it ends up producing lot of free radicals. So is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Yes, obviously, it's a bad thing, but it is normal. Okay, little bit of those free radicals have to be generated. Otherwise, this first reaction would not be complete. Okay, and body is aware about it. That's why I keep saying glutathione in every session. So our body makes its own antioxidant called as glutathione to quench all these free radicals. So you should, like I always encourage, remember about glutathione, because I know that our naturopathic students rely on some amazing, wonderful herbs. But when it comes to nutritional interventions, we look for some nutrients in which glutathione is a major one. It is the main antioxidants acting in the liver. It is made up of 3 amino acids: glutamine, glycine, and cysteine. Okay. So have you heard about NAC, N-acylcysteine? That's one of the very popular intervention or supplement. It works at various levels, and one of the levels it works is because it helps us in making glutathione. Now, remember that glutathione acts as an antioxidant in phase 1, but it is also important in phase 2, and we will learn about it in coming up slides. Okay, does anybody has any question at this stage? Okay, now couple of things about glutathione. So it is produced in various cells. Our body is able to make it when it needs it. So it works as GSH. Why? Because it has that hydrogen molecule to give away. In doing so, it gets converts to GSSG. And then we have the ability to regenerate it. In fact, when we do some experiments, when we look at if a person has a liver damage, and we try to look at the level of GSH, it is now directly linked that if somebody has a change in the ratio of these two forms of glutathione, it indicates us that liver is not working properly. So it exists in the cell as the reduced form as well as the oxidized form. We need to have more of reduced form because this is how it acts as an antioxidant. So people who have any liver disease or any condition, we can measure it. If anybody has ever got their liver studies done, they check for GGT among some other enzyme. So low GGT is an indication that their glutathione is depleted. So how does it act? As usual, I will go through the figure first and then we'll go to the written form. So this is an example how glutathione is functioning. So we have these two molecules of reduced glutathione, and let's say that in the liver we are generating hydrogen peroxide, which is a toxic product. Now glutathione is responsible to render this hydrogen peroxide harmless. So it uses this enzyme, glutathione peroxidase. This enzyme is able to convert hydrogen peroxide to harmless water. In doing so, this enzyme needs selenium as a cofactor. Have you heard that selenium is called as antioxidant nutrient now? So that's one of the reasons, because it supports our body's endogenous antioxidant. So now glutathione has done its function. It has given away, donated its hydrogen group, and it gets converted to oxidized glutathione, which is GSSG. However, we want it to rejuvenate itself because we are always exposing our body to pollutants or chemicals, and we need it to work again. So this glutathione can be again reduced in the presence of enzyme called as glutathione reductase. Now this enzyme needs riboflavin as a cofactor. And you would recall when we were doing riboflavin, I did mention about it, that it supports glutathione. So it's a cofactor here. And now where would that hydrogen group come? So that we have GSH. That will come from niacin. So that's why niacin is so important for liver functioning. Okay, questions?
Nancy, I'm so sorry. Did you say that the hydrogen group comes from niacin? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So we have, active form of niacin.
Yep.
Nicotinamide, adenine dinucleotide. And then we have this hydrogen here that is being donated so that NADPH get converted to NADP.
And so Nancy, so NADPH is niacin. So what does it turn once it donates the hydrogen? What is NADP? What is that?
It's the inactive form of niacin.
Niacin. Okay. Does that go off then and become activated again?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Vitamin C helps. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
We help each other.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, I'm happy to repeat this or take a minute to make this diagram on your own, because from the exam perspective, I would like you all to remember the name of these enzymes and the cofactors. So meanwhile, let me have a look at the chat. So Isabel is still asking that I'm not clear about the phase 1 importance yet. So what's happening is, Isabel, we are now looking at the components of phase 1 pathway. That with the help of cytochromes and with the help of glutathione, we are able to convert toxic metabolites into harmless or water-soluble compounds that our body can excrete. And these are the compounds that phase 1 detoxifies. Various drugs such as antihistamines or steroids, ibuprofen, salicylates, caffeine. Has anybody heard that when they take caffeine, even in small amounts, they can't tolerate it or they can't sleep? So that's giving us an indication that phase 1 is not able to metabolize caffeine. That's why it is coming up in the blood for so long. It should be there for a short duration, reach to the liver, and liver should take care of it. But it's not happening. So that's an indication that phase 1 is not working properly. Has anybody heard people who say they can't tolerate any perfumes or any paint fumes?
Nancy, I can't tolerate any of that. I am, yeah, very much so.
Yes. So what do you think? Sorry, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. So tell me, can you correlate that with the information we have learned so far?
Yes, Nancy, can I also tell you though, I see a naturopath and she said that chemical insensitivity that I have, she said to her, it's a very big sign that my gut is leaky. So I don't know if you would correlate with that, but
yes. First you correlate with liver, and when you remember your gut-liver axis, it surely indicates that. Because they both are connected.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, I'll let the other person speak. Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, thank you. I was just wondering about that as well, because I have got rid of all chemicals in my house. I don't use any of that anymore. So I was semi-okay with it, but now taking all that chemical out of my life, like I feel like I'm more sensitive to it because I'm not used to it anymore. But could that just be a coincidence, or is that still an indication that the liver could not be working properly?
Thanks for sharing that, Kerry. Would anybody like to comment on that?
Nancy, can I just say, as I'm like Kerry, and Kerry, I have, when you read about all these things, I've removed from my as well. And I have read that, I think that they say once you pull them away and then when you come across them, I guess, would it be right, Nancy, that when you're using things like that, your body builds a tolerance to them or something, and then, it's sort of not until you step away that you think, oh, that's when but yeah, I'll let you speak, Nancy.
No, that's fine. Would anybody else like to comment? And in doing so, we kind of understand it more.
Actually, Nancy. Oh.
No, carry on, Victoria.
I think it's different when you take stuff away and then come back to it, because I think just chemicals have stronger smells than natural smells, and maybe that's different. Whereas when it's a liver problem, you actually feel kind of nauseous of it. I know I get that, but I get that in the morning only. I get really nauseous, and when, like, for example, this morning while I was driving, when I was smelling the fumes outside on the road, I was getting really nauseous, and I think that is very different to actually just smelling something bad.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think removing the chemicals from your life and then smelling chemicals is just like a harsh smell that you're not used to anymore. Whereas when it's like liver problem, you actually feel like sick of it, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. So I guess all of you are right in a way, because yes, our body gets used to. However, after a point, we are used to only till liver has the capacity to fight it out. Once we lose it, then it starts impacting the normal functioning of the body. And Carrie is also right that once we kind of acclimatize to an environment where we are not exposed to any of these chemicals, then also body, because our body is so amazing, it acclimatizes. And if there is even a tiny, tiny amount of chemicals, your body would tell you, you will become sensitive as compared to the other people who are on routine basis, let's say being exposed to because of occupational hazard to other pollutants. Plus some of us, now I'm going to again throw in a technical term here, which I was going to discuss later in context to alcohol, but let me say here, all these chemicals, now the research that is coming out, all these hydrocarbons, heavy metals, whatever we are doing to the environment, these actually, they are made up of what? They are made up of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, all these chemicals. They can actually become a part of our DNA. That's what we call as DNA adjunct. Okay? Now that change in the DNA can sit in our lifetime and we may not have any symptoms. But suppose I travel overseas and there is some other exposure, or I change my occupation, there is a superimposition with some other interaction, and then that change will translate into some symptoms. So there are, I'm not sure whether I'm answering the question or I'm digressing. So the thing is, body takes time to heal. But if we change the environment, it is susceptible to that same damage. And even if when we are smelling something, all these perfumes, they are chemicals. They need to be metabolized via liver. So again, there can be a bad smell or there can be a chemical that is reaching the liver for metabolization and in its process harming the liver. Sorry, did it make some sense? Did we arrive at some conclusion?
Nancy, can I just ask you then, you know how with people say for alcohol and they don't metabolize this alcohol well, what happens, Nancy, then? Because I know alcohol is a poison, and so what happens to this stuff if you're not metabolizing it? Is that when it starts doing this damage to the cells with DNA or yeah. So if the body can't change it to water soluble and excrete it, is that when it starts storing it?
Yes, correct, Kathleen. You have the answer.
And where is it stored, Nancy?
See, I have not heard that liver stores all the toxins. It starts coming in the blood. It starts going to the gut. Okay? And then it starts interacting with the normal metabolic function if it is not excreted. Or it just stays there waiting to be excreted. If that doesn't happen, those cells start degenerating because body's defense mechanism is to fight it out, to get rid of it. So in doing so, those cells, they die fighting. Okay? That's why when you go for your blood test, you notice many of those liver enzymes are elevated. So that's your sign.
So Nancy, when those liver enzymes are elevated, it just means that what the body's just trying, they're producing more of these enzymes to try and get rid of, to try and break down this stuff. Is that right then?
Correct. Yes.
Mm.
And Ali is asking, could this be likened to alcohol? After not drinking for a while, it affects you much faster, more. Somewhat, Ali, that could be one of the reasons, among others reason, because alcohol works at various level. It can interact with neurotransmitters also, and we will learn about it in the coming up slide. Okay, let's move on, but feel free to pop in any question if you have. Now I know this slide has classified some nutrients for phase 1 and phase 2 as primary, phase 1 as primary and secondary. However, like you know that all of them are important. So in a way, I made this slide so that you can remember few from the exam perspective. But in the ideal situation, we should know that how important vitamin B3 is. Now, reflecting on what I have learned in previous slides, I would like to put it on the top here, isn't it? So, ascorbic acid is important because it helps in rejuvenating glutathione. Copper and zinc and magnesium are important because they support another endogenous antioxidant, which is metallothionein or superoxide dismutase. So that's why they are important. However, iron, thiamine, riboflavin, they are all together very important for phase 1 detoxification.
Nancy, you said that ascorbic acid, it's important to regenerate glutathione. And is that because it returns the inactive niacin to active niacin?
Yes, it helps there. Plus, it can also directly support that step. If niacin is not there,
yep,
and vitamin C is there, it can also give that hydrogen to
glutathione. Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
Welcome. Now, tell me, now based on this information, and kind of we will touch upon this slide, do you want phase 1 to be overactive? Or do you want to be optimally active?
I'd say optimally active, Nancy. I wouldn't want to overactive.
Yes, correct. So what's happening is that we want it to be induced. So there's a word written here, inducer. And it can have both sense. Positive, it can be a facilitator also, but it can be the reverse also. So let's try to understand it and discuss it. So it's written that inducers of phase 1 are some environmental pollutants or alcohol, nicotine, paint fumes, pesticides. So what does that mean when I say they induce phase 1?
They set it off, Nancy. They start the body in the process of producing enzymes, I guess. Is that right?
Yes, thanks, Kathleen. Would everybody else agree? Yes, good. So if a liver is normal, this should happen. It should be able to metabolize all the toxins completely, and phase 1 should work. However, that doesn't mean that for liver phase 1 to continue to occur, we want that repeated exposure. Okay. Now in the same category, you have cruciferous veggies written here. What does that mean? Same category, inducers of phase 1. Sorry, I'm doing so because I've noticed, sometimes there is confusion in regard to this word that has been written on the slide, inducer. So when I'm saying that cruciferous veggies, if I'm taking broccoli daily, I am inducing phase 1. So what does that mean?
Is that
Yes,
inducing
Rebecca, thank you.
in a positive way? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So that means that it is ensuring that my phase 1 continue to work optimally, because cruciferous veggies, they contain a lot of sulfur rich compounds. One of that is cysteine. So it supports manufacturing of glutathione. So that's just one way in which these amazing veggies, they support liver phase 1. Now, why is this important? Because it will connect to what Kathleen was saying, that if there is overexposure of anything, then there may be an overactive phase 1. So we are pushing it to its limit and it is going ahead of phase 2. So phase 2 is not able to manage all the load that is coming towards its way. Plus, remember I said that when phase 1 acts, it produces a lot of free radicals. So if again there is an overactive phase 1, then too many free radicals are being manufactured and glutathione may not be able to quench all of them if there is not balance. Again, the body is trying to keep a balance. So that's why we don't want it to be overactive and we don't want it to be underactive.
Can I ask a question on the underactive and overactive?
Yeah.
This might be a silly question, but I'm just getting a bit lost now. So it seems that all the negative things are kind of making it underactive with the caffeine, perfume, and chemicals. So what would actually be creating it to be overactive, or is it just?
Same things. Same things can also initially. So when there is attack of all these pollutants, liver becomes overactive because it wants to get rid of it. However, if we are not supporting it with the nutrients and other components, over the long run, it will become lethargic and it may become underactive because it can't keep up with the pace of exposure of exogenous pollutants.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So cruciferous vegetables are more, it's almost like a support because they keep the liver active, but the other ones are more like, I don't know, aggressing it, sort of aggressive to it. And that's why it reacts. That's how I see it. I don't know if it makes sense, if it's right.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that helps. Yeah. Okay, now coming up to a couple of things, as one of you mentioned in the beginning, that grapefruit juice is contraindicated. So now these are, on this slide, we have few of the inhibitors of liver detox phase 1. So you can see that our favorite herb or spice, turmeric, is written here, curcumin. Then we have calendula also written here. Some phytochemicals such as quercetin and capsaicin are also written here apart from grapefruit. Now, what do I take away from this slide? Has anybody heard if, like I had a friend who unfortunately had to, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then she was given a medication and she was specifically asked not to take too much of curcumin or grapefruit juice. So just again, trying to understand that we should, what does that mean by not taking these medications or these spices?
Nancy, is it because they're interfering? They travel through the CPY, is it 450 pathway as well? Is that right? I don't know. Nancy, do they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bang on. Yes. Okay. So what's happening? Yes, these are amazing nutrients and spices and herbs. However, they, as you know all, and I would request if some of you can throw light on some other herbs also. They are very good. They are very potent. So they rely on the same cytochrome enzyme on which those drugs depend. So what will happen is if they are taking that particular drug and they're also taking curcumin, then that would interfere with the metabolization of that drug. And in fact, that drug can roam about in large amount in the blood and would not be able to do its function. Okay. But what about if I am eating curries all the time and I am adding so much turmeric there? Should I be careful?
Nancy, I don't think if you're not on any sort of a medication, I don't think so. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's see what others have to say. I'm waiting. Let everybody get a chance if they have anything to say.
I think I agree with Kathleen that if you aren't taking a drug that's going to affect the CYP 450 pathway, then it's fine to take.
Yeah, absolutely, it's fine. And you know, even if somebody is taking medication, like in curry, actually, I add just half a teaspoon of turmeric. And turmeric, as I've mentioned earlier, it is not curcumin. There are many other compounds that act as antioxidant there. So little bit in food amounts is still okay. But if we are talking about grapefruit juice, or if we are talking about curcumin capsules in large dosages of about 10 or 20 or 40 milligrams, that could be an issue. But yes, Rebecca, you're right. If no medication, then there's not going to be an issue. Okay. So again, from future clinic, please be mindful about medicine and herb interaction from this perspective. So if somebody has an interference or they have dysfunctional liver detox pathway 1, then they may come to you with some of these symptoms. Is there a liver detoxification test that we may have heard somewhere about or read anything about it? I know there is a liver function test that we do, but what about liver detoxification test?
Nancy, I haven't heard of one.
Yeah, okay. So that's fine. Again, in your preclinical subject, you will study about it. So in that test, it was earlier called a caffeine test, but last year TGA has disapproved it. So now what we are giving is, we are giving paracetamol. So they give you a particular dose of paracetamol, and then they test some metabolites in the saliva and maybe in the liver. So what they are checking is that whether we are able to metabolize that paracetamol completely. And then we can actually pinpoint whether it's the phase 1 or phase 2 that is not working properly. So this was just that extra bit that yes, we can do a liver detoxification test also. And I will post some extra bit on Loop about that.
How does the
Yeah.
sugar craving, how is it explained by the detox, dysfunctional detox?
Okay, good question. Would anybody like to comment? Thinking from the glucose metabolism pathway, where does that happen? What does the liver do to the glucose? And in a way, it is associated with insulin resistance actually. Okay. So it's in a way linked to insulin resistance that involves liver also. So in spite of taking glucose, it is not being metabolized to glycogen, and that leads to insulin resistance and people have sugar cravings. So that's just one. And it will go together again with fatty liver and insulin resistance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Isabel is asking, okay, I think I missed one of your earlier question. How many of these symptoms are needed to realize that phase 1 is not working? In my understanding, Isabel, it would be even one. Even somebody comes and tell me that, you know, till last month or last year, they were okay with caffeine, but now they are having an issue, you know. So even one symptom would be giving me an indication, such as they may say that I had a clear bowel movement earlier, but now I notice that they are not being flushed or they are fatty now. Even one symptom would be sufficient for me. But you have to look at the other picture also. You have to ask them their history. You have to ask them about their dietary intake. So not alone, but with the entire clinical history, it would make sense. Isn't it? Because bloating could be so general. Maybe just one day they went out and they had a spicy food, or they had, for the first time in their life, they had taken a high fiber diet in which there were too many lentils and they felt bloated. So that one off would not count, but the entire picture of their case history. Does that help? So this is just a summary slide. What is happening in phase 1 detoxification of the liver? So with the help of cytochrome P450, that are iron-dependent enzyme, liver carries out these chemical reactions such as hydrolysis to convert the toxins into some intermediary metabolites. In doing so, they generate free radicals that can be quenched by glutathione. Okay. You can have a look at this blog. It talks about various nutrients that help liver detox phase 1. We have discussed many of them today, like NAC, cruciferous veggies, iron, niacin, vitamin C. So they are the few one. But when we finish the slides and I have made few groups for discussion, then we can have reading of this blog along with the other one. So let's go through liver detoxification phase 2. Do we need a 5 minutes break at this stage, or are we okay?
That would be good, Nancy.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes break. Okay, cool. So moving on with liver detoxification phase 2. So in the first step, that is the liver detox 1, body was able to change the form of the toxic metabolites and can make it water soluble so that we can excrete it out. Now, what happens is, if the first step was not able to do anything to the drug or metabolites, but it has to be excreted, it diverts it to phase 2. Phase 2 again tries to convert it into a water-soluble compound. If it can't do it, then it holds hand of sorry, one of the slides. Yes, sorry. So what it does is, in the second phase, the metabolites are tied to some compounds so that they can hold their hand and just throw them out of our system. So that's what we are doing. We are doing conjugation. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are 6 conjugation pathways. And the first one you can see is glutathione. Then we have amino acid conjugation, methylation, sulfation, acetylation, and glucourinidation. So based on the chemical composition of the toxins, each of these pathways can take care of numerous toxins and just excrete them away. Okay. So these are the 6 pathways. Now again, various nutrients are required for each one. I don't expect that you remember all of them in details, but remember, what are they doing? What is the main functional compound in each pathway? So if we start with sulfation, it is the process in which the intermediate metabolites, they are conjugated with sulfur containing compounds. So that's why the nutrients that this pathway is using is cysteine and methionine, that are sulfur containing amino acids. Then pyridoxine, molybdenum, they are the cofactors, and glutathione is the antioxidant. What are the compounds that this pathway excretes? So terpenes, amines from fried meats, dietary compounds such as DHEA, catecholamines, melatonin, vitamin D, estrogen. So now trying to think, what are the clients that can come with excess of these metabolites, and we may have to strengthen this pathway. Trying to think some of those conditions. So maybe if somebody has estrogen, yeah, I'll wait if somebody has. So if somebody has estrogen dominance, if somebody is stressed like me, I will have a lot of cortisol that has to be taken care of. If I have consumed over the weekend a lot of barbecued meat and I do it every Friday. So those are the conditions or dietary habits that I would be mindful that if the client is exposed to these conditions, then there is a chance that their sulfation pathway needs a little support. Then is the glucouronidation pathway. Now, this is a compound called as glucouronic acid. It binds to steroids, salicylate, carcinogen, bilirubin, excess estrogen. Sorry, I've written estrogen twice and both with different spelling. My mistake. Sorry. I will correct this one. So all these compounds, if they are in excess and phase 1 has failed to take care of them, then we need glucouronic acid to bind to them so that they can be conjugated and excreted. Fish oils and limonene. So whenever I am making a cake or if I'm making myself a salad, I will like to add orange zest or lemon zest because it has limonene and it supports this pathway. Has anybody heard of calcium glucarate? So sometime, premenopausal or menopausal phase, women may be having hormonal issues because of excessive estrogen and estrogen spikes, and then calcium glucarate is amazing. It helps a lot. Why? Because it supports this conjugation pathway. And we can't stop talking about glutathione, isn't it? So it not only works as an antioxidant, but it can also conjugate and excrete some drugs and heavy metals by binding and excreting them. Therefore, what all nutrients it would require? It would need glycine, cysteine, glutamine, because glutathione is made up of these 3 amino acids. Then we also need vitamin C, selenium, niacin, and riboflavin. We need methionine, and it will become clear in the session 8 when we will see the pathway in which our body makes glutathione. And not surprisingly, it starts with folate. Okay, so we'll talk about that detail. 2 more to go. So one is acetylation. As the name suggests, it uses acetyl coenzyme A to conjugate intermediate metabolites. So whenever somebody is taking any of these drugs, then this pathway is upregulated. Then some people who have excess of serotonin or histamine, then this pathway needs to be supported so that too much of it is not left. So it makes a conjugates and excrete all of them. Nutrient cofactors, all your vitamin Bs and lipoic acid and vitamin C. Because remember, we are making acetyl-CoA utilizing all these nutrients as cofactor. And amino acid conjugation. So body, why, high biological value protein sources are so important, because body can use some of these individual amino acids in the liver to excrete certain drugs, as well as bile acid or PABA or excess of palmitic acid. That's why all these amino acids become the cofactors, or they are component of this conjugation pathway. Last one is methylation. And as the name suggests, it conjugates with the help of methyl group. So if you have a client who comes to you with lot of exposure to lead or mercury, so their occupational history gives you an indication that they are having liver issues because they have too much exposure to heavy metals. So how do you support their liver? By upregulating the methylation conjugation. And how do you do it? By giving few dietary or supplemental forms of methionine or semi, folate or choline. These are all methyl donors. And how this pathway works, we will discuss in session 8.
Nancy, can I just ask you, when you say they conjugate with these different substances, is it then, are they excreted in the urine or excreted in the poo? Or do they go both ways?
So they are mostly excreted in the feces.
In the feces, I thought so, yeah.
Water-soluble one goes to the urine. These one would mostly go to the feces.
Lovely. Thank you, Nancy.
Welcome. Good point again, Kathleen. Anybody else? I was actually going to ask any questions at this stage. Okay. So it will be a good idea, Did I add? Yeah. Kind of make a table for yourself for this pathway and keep it with you till your clinic days. Okay. So you would know which cofactor, and maybe you plan to do a liver function test or liver detox test, then it would help. And also trying to kind of remember that methylation means that then, okay, so every slide had few cofactors listed for each pathway. We also have few inducers or inhibitors here. In inhibitors, if somebody is taking really low protein diet, or somebody is taking a lot of paracetamol or aspirin for something, in the long run, we need to be mindful that that can impact on somebody's liver. Their liver may become sluggish in the long term. So they need to be supported with all the nutrients possible. That's why this slide has listed. So you can see your Brassica family comes on top as far as your liver support is concerned. And then methyl group, that also is very important. I usually am always ready with a particular salad recipe. If somebody is coming to me with non-alcoholic liver or liver detox issues in general, and that one is rich in Brussels, that salad is rich in Brussels sprout, broccoli, beetroot, spinach, kale.
Nancy, would you share it with us?
Oh, that's a simple one. Yeah, that's a simple one. I would like somebody else to share their recipe this time.
Okay, Nancy, perhaps you can give us yours as well, though. It sounds lovely.
Definitely, I'll do that, and kind of educate them to add limonene containing foods wherever possible in very, very small amounts. So would anybody like to share any of the herbs that they know of in helping with liver health? I know my naturopathy students are always teaching me something. Okay, if you can't remember or you remember later, just pop it in the chat box or share it on the loop, please. Any of the herbs that you remember can support liver.
Nancy, I've just started my Materia Medica one, but I know dandelion, or I think it's
Yes.
officinalis. Yeah, very good for liver, they say. Mm.
Yes, dandelion. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've heard that one, and I had one of my friend gifted me that one. Good. Okay. Now this slide is listing some of the inhibitors, and you can see that mostly it is talking about deficiency of certain nutrients that can impact the conjugation pathway. So yeah, so just being mindful of all these wonderful micronutrients that can support the liver. Okay, let's move on to alcohol metabolism. We all know it has a lot of social and economical implication. It does not have any metabolic benefits that we know of, except for those social benefits. How is it metabolized in the body is, first we try to convert it into acetaldehyde, and then the next step is that we convert it into acetate. Then acetate can actually be converted to acetyl-CoA, which can participate in the TCA cycle. That's why, it says that it can give some kilocalories. That's why it says that. Okay.
Nancy, can I just ask you?
Yes.
One of the short chain fatty acids, they're propionate, butyrate, and acetate.
Yes.
Is it the same acetate, or?
I have no clue, Kathleen. You got me there. Need to look for that. Yes. I'll have a look, okay?
Thanks, Nancy. I'll see what I can find too.
Good on you to remember that it is that one. Yes. Okay, thank you, Victoria. She has listed few of the beautiful herbs that can help in the liver. Milk thistle, artichoke. Okay, chai hue. I've not heard that one. Barberry and dandelion. Thanks, Victoria. Awesome. Okay, so in this slide, trying to bring your focus on the 3 enzymes that we are using to metabolize alcohol. So we have alcohol dehydrogenase and acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. Then we have microsomal ethanol oxidizing system. So it's kind of a number of enzymes, and they actually use cytochromes. So they are ion dependent. And then last is the catalase. Catalase is another endogenous antioxidant. Our body makes it. And it actually becomes active if we have too much of hydrogen peroxide. That's its main function. So now you can imagine that whenever I am consuming too much of alcohol, then the same enzymes that are allocated in my body to ensure that liver detoxification is happening properly, optimally, they are in fact diverted to metabolize alcohol. So this is the one, cytochrome 2E1. It uses niacin. It also needs iron. Catalase is also iron dependent. And then we try to convert acetaldehyde to acetate. So what implications do you see for your clients if somebody comes to you and they say that they are going through a low phase in their life? We are always facing so many things and they don't want to give away little bit of pleasure that they get when they are having any drinks with their family or friends, looking at the nutrients and enzyme that are required for metabolizing alcohol.
Well, Nancy, you could certainly you need increased iron, don't you? Because these enzymes are iron dependent.
Yes, I agree. Anything else?
So you could,
Increase in B vitamins like B3, B12.
Definitely, definitely. And doesn't this tell you that if they are coming with alcohol dependence, they are going to be poor in their liver stores for vitamin A, iron, what else? Niacin. People are so deficient in B3. Proteins as well. Okay. So just again the step-by-step listing of how body is trying to metabolize alcohol. But apart from these enzymes and nutrients and liver health, there are some long-term effects as well. And I'm sure that you're all aware that it has an inflammation for brain cells, sleep disturbances. People may have tremors. There are gastrointestinal issues, definitely. Now, glutamate is the excitatory transmitter, and in the short-term effects, alcohol can inhibit this glutamate, and it can also lead to increase of GABA. That's why people may have tremors and anxiety if they are depending or taking too much alcohol. So in fact, all the body systems are affected. And I did mention about the liver function test. So kind of this slide is listing some of those metabolites that are measured in liver function test. And it is also telling that these are the enzymes that we need to look for when we are assessing impact of alcohol on anybody's liver function. So these liver enzymes are mostly elevated. So one is alanine transaminase and aspartase transaminase. As you would recollect from your bioscience lecture, they are responsible for converting one amino acid into another. That's why this enzyme name is transaminase. Amino group is transferred from one to another. So that is impacted. Then GGT I mentioned earlier, that is actually a direct indicator that liver needs some help. It is yelling out that I need some help. Give me some broccoli rather than alcohol. Okay, I did mention a little bit about these DNA adducts. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of that if acetaldehyde is accumulated, then it can cause damage to the DNA. I'll show you the picture of micronuclei in session 8. What is that? I'll explain that later. And that can lead to formation of these DNA adduct. And you know our cells are always dividing. So, and our cells also have DNA damage repairing enzyme. So sometime this can be tackled. However, if it is repeated insult, then sometime those pathways can become exhausted. And this is now correlated with some mutations also. Then I'm always asked, why people become alcohol dependent. And they have tried to look at the pathways, and what we have found out is that it messes up with the dopamine pathway, which may be the reason that people become alcohol dependent. So this one also, we know that once liver is impacted, gut-liver axis come into play, and it may lead to intestinal permeability because endotoxin from the liver can translocate to the gut, and people may have dysbiosis, allergy, or inflammatory condition because the cytokines such as interleukins and tumor necrosis factor alpha, they impair the cellular function. Okay, so tell me, does alcohol has a bright side? Shall we, I think we are not too many. Would you like if I divide you people into 2 groups and you want to go through this blog and talk about whether little bit of alcohol is actually good, or shall we continue like this in the entire group? Whatever you say.
Well, because we're only 9, I reckon it will be interesting to speak.
Okay, that's okay, Victoria. Let's stay here. Okay, tell me, is there something good about little bit of alcohol? Or maybe red wine is good, isn't it? They say red wine is full of antioxidant, it is good. Yes, Isabel, that's what I'm asking. That's what I want you people to talk about, how to convince. I might have given this example earlier that we had a client who was a lady in her late 60s, and she had recently lost a very good friend of hers. She was feeling really low and she wanted to lose weight. So, but every evening her partner would open a bottle of wine, and then she was like, I could not stay away from it. And we could see that she's feeling low in her life, and we wonder, how can we say that don't take it? So yes, that's what Ali is asking also, like social life helps distress. What do we do? Or maybe that little bit of red wine is good. Okay.
I think there's so many other places that we can get antioxidants from that we don't necessarily need to drink red wine. I don't agree with drinking it all. And I think that if you use it to help you in signs of distress, then you're more likely for it to become a crutch for you. And I just think you're better off to go for a walk together with somebody or do something that's actually going to promote more positive pathways and hormones being released. And yeah, I just don't agree with alcohol drinking at all. That's just my personal standpoint. Yeah.
That's fine. I'm happy to hear it. You know, I was going to say, I was introduced to wine, like, I'm not saying it in a bad sense. I'm happy about it when I came to Australia. And it's really hard not to go after it, maybe once in a while. But I like the way you put your points in, and I can see how you would be able to discuss that with your clients. Definitely, there are other beautiful sources for antioxidants, isn't it?
I kind of agree with the fact that you obviously don't want to rely on wine for health benefits. I personally don't like red wine, but I know that it's something that a lot of people, it's like, for example, people that like chocolate, well, I don't know for you, but for me, like I love to have a piece of dark chocolate after my dinner, whereas other people, it's like their ritual to have, I don't know, with their partner or something, like a glass of wine. And I don't think, well, my philosophy is everything in moderation. I don't think you need to cut everything off your life. And if it's something that makes you feel good without having to actually like physically do sports or need to talk to someone, if you just want to like be by yourself, I don't know, sit in a bath or sit in your on your couch or something and have a glass of wine and that makes you feel good, I mean, why not? But obviously not drink on like a regular basis, like a bottle of wine.
I agree, Victoria. Thank you. I'll remember that chocolate. Okay, anybody else? Everybody should be able to say something. I'm waiting. Okay.
Nancy,
Yeah.
does someone else want to talk first? No? Nancy, I was just going to say, around about 10 years ago, I worked up in Darwin for a little while. And I guess I haven't ever, the only time I had started having a little bit of alcohol, I've had very poor gut health for many years, was when someone told me a bit of red wine might help my gut health. Well, I'm willing to try anything. But anyway, from the work that I did up in Darwin, I just saw there was some nights there, if there was no drinking or no violence, I would have been unemployed, Nancy. And you think that's really, I think you just see, you know, alcohol can sometimes, not only health-wise, is it detrimental to your health, is it, but it can also be very detrimental socially, you know, to families, can't it? It's addictive. And, you know, sometimes it just turns people into a different person, doesn't it? Mm.
Yeah. And
I guess
Yeah.
if you have a client that drinks wine, you kind of want to dig into how much they do drink and then realize if it's actually an addiction or not. And if it was an addiction, then maybe direct them to like a specialist in that way. But if the person actually is not like an alcoholic, then I wouldn't be concerned, if that makes sense.
yeah, it definitely does, Victoria. And tell me, what about, I think Isabel was asking, you know, all this research coming out that red wine is rich in antioxidants. How much resveratrol is there? Do we know that? Can we quantify it? And how do we convince our clients?
Nancy, I think I've read that you'd have to drink a boatload of it to get a reasonable amount of resveratrol. But
I think 120 bottles was the
yeah. Nancy, you know, when you look at everything that the liver does, you just think, why would you want to do that? Give it that extra stress.
Yes. That's why, all these slides to talk about, DNA, talk about liver enzymes. So, okay. And there is also a little bit of research that says if you take the normal amounts, which is 2 servings of a whiskey or hard drink every second or third day, it increases good HDL. Has anybody seen that research?
I think those kinds of research are coming out because people are too lazy to stop what they do, and instead of actually stopping and changing their ways of changing their habits, they're trying to find research so that people can continue to do that. And I guess it's also a little bit related to marketing as well, in my opinion.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy that we know what kind of advice we're going to give in future, how to convince the clients, how to, but it's kind of a long way, because we want people's thinking to change, socialization to change. But that's what happened. Every small step counts.
I think the most dangerous thing about those articles is that it says wine is healthy for, and I think that wine and healthy are maybe not supposed to be put in one sentence.
I agree. Thanks, Victoria. Yes, I agree. Good. Go after those lovely grapes, berries that are organic. Otherwise, they'll be sprayed with so much pesticides, hardly any antioxidative benefits.
And Mansi, I guess just looking at the other side, the Mediterranean diet, which is, touted to be a very healthful diet, and that does include a small amount, doesn't it, of red wine? But, they say that that's going, the Italians, they make their own wine. And so it's very different to what is bought and sold in the bottle shops or wherever it's sold, Mansi. So, and it's all the way about how they eat, isn't it? They get together as a family or as friends, and they sort of celebrate, don't they? They celebrate the but yeah, the way that I guess the way it's all made is completely different as well, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, it's made with love and self-grown ingredients. All that labor goes in rather than sulfites and nitrites, isn't it? Yes, you have a point there. Mediterranean diet does talk about, but in moderation, once in a while, and with a lot of salads and nuts and fish. So, yeah. Would anybody else like to add anything? Thank you. That I really enjoyed that discussion and that understanding that we all share. So now a couple of slides left. This one is actually talking about if we have a client who needs some help in rejuvenating the liver from alcohol dependence, then we can work with some of these nutrients. So definitely your vitamin B's is there. I'll talk about a couple of them. Definitely remember glutathione and zinc. Why? Because those enzymes that are metabolizing alcohol dehydrogenase and acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, they use zinc as a cofactor. So please be mindful that client would be deficient in zinc. Okay. Then carnitine, definitely, because it can actually reverse the damage to the liver cell. I'm sure you're all aware that our liver cells can regenerate themselves, and carnitine plays a major role. Even if it is fatty liver, non-alcoholic liver, and starting of cirrhotic changes, carnitine can help. Glutamine, it repairs the gut layer because these people would be having gut permeability, and glutamine helps with the gut layer. Plus, because glutamine is a precursor for neurotransmitter glutamate, it can work at the neurotransmitter level. So definitely remember glutamine for reversing detrimental effects of alcohol. Now there is this term written here, PGE1. So it actually means prostaglandin E, and we make it from omega-6 in our body, and it helps in mood. So we'll talk about it, how our body makes it in session 10, but just being mindful that we can assist by giving nuts so that mood swings in such people can be addressed. So just a screenshot of an abstract from an article by Hong et al. It was published in 2014. Now, this is a very small study just for 12 weeks, but I have listed it here because it directly shows that by giving some carnitine supplements, carnitine orotate in this case, about 300 milligram thrice a day, the changes in the liver enzymes are remarkable. So just trying to get that point across, that carnitine, remember, for supporting any client with alcohol detoxification. So that's all for today, but happy to discuss anything or any questions or any comment for today's session. Okay, now for your second assessment, it is asking you to comment on phase 1. So when the time comes, again, we will have a webinar. So just trying to encourage you to focus on phase 1 and the components and nutrients required in that pathway. So that's all for today. Have a good week and let me know in the loop if you have any questions, and I need to bye for now.
Nancy, could I